welcome to Daniel's World, and today we're on Greece. So this is our 5th country for the Norwegian Pearl. So will have a bunch of other videos out on it. The first one kind of explains how we get here and some other excursions. And we have three things we're going to in Greece, 3 different excursions, 3 different days. So the countries we're going to in this kind of series is Greece, Montenegro, Slovenia, Croatia, and Italy. That's 5 countries. But anyways, let me show you the first excursion and then the other 2. So when we arrived here, we saw our final fort for the cruise, and it was actually probably my favorite one. There wasn't very many people there, and it had a lot of history, since it had been ruled by so many different empires and countries. And this is just our first stop in Greece. Even on the outside, you can see some modifications from the different people that ruled this fort. And honestly, even just outside the fort, there were so many different old things, including this tree, which had these weird root things literally just hanging from the branches. At first, we thought it was a magnolia, but apparently it's not. Oh yeah, and this fort's surrounded by water. It was also close to an airport, so that was kind of annoying to hear. But either way, the cool architecture inside and outside the building made it worth it. Speaking of which, here's a really cool old palace. There was even this cool statue surrounded by water out front. And here's a good example of architecture from when the French ruled this area. And here is the bell tower from one of the most important churches on this island. And there was also an ice cream / candy shop in this town. And yes, for all the people who are watching my other videos I made in Europe, I was thinking about that guy that told us it was 50 euros for a bag of candy. Anyways, we got some ice cream, got out of there, and then walked around some more. And in case you're wondering, yes, we do go in the fort later, but for now, we have 45 minutes of free time, so we basically spent it all walking around. At this point, we had made it back to the fort, and of course, just like every other time in Europe, there was cats everywhere. I don't know why, but it seems like every place we go to in Europe, there are cats everywhere. So the tan brick building is architecture from when the British ruled this fort. And I think what makes this so cool is that there's add-ons from so many periods in time. And here's a bell tower up on the hill, which was really pretty. And again, some more buildings, which are still being used to this day for all sorts of things, like music classes. And at this point, we were getting pretty close to what is actually a restaurant that we were going to inside here that actually had some pretty good food. At this point, it was time to go down this slope and into the restaurant. And there's people that had their bikes parked out here. And of course, there was a really pretty pebble beach with driftwood all over the place. And believe it or not, those mountains in the distance are part of the country Albania. So I started off with some Fanta, which is way better in Europe. And then there were these cheesy things. It's kind of like fried cheese. It was good. And then there were these stuffed mushrooms, which were super good. And all sorts of meat, like lamb kebabs and chicken. And then for dessert, they gave us this really good dark chocolate cake with walnuts. And just like that, it was already time to leave that restaurant. And afterwards, all we really saw of the fort was just stuff leaving it, because our boat left super early, so we had no time to explore any of the fort at all. And they also have some artifacts from when the Romans invaded this fortress. And when we left the fortress, we were able to see some abandoned fishing houses. And then a final overview of this beautiful fortress's walls. And my sister got to be the tour guide for a little bit. And driving out, I saw the new fortress. And when I say new, I don't mean like new. I just mean that it's newer than the fortress we were just in. And on the way back, there were some chairs you're not supposed to sit in. And yes, I'm not joking. That chair has a sign that says you are not allowed to sit in it. And it makes no sense. It's not like there was some old artifact or something. Anyways, when we got on the boat, it was just about time for it to leave. And we got a pretty good view of the old fortress. And then we got another view of the mountains of Albania. And then it was day 2 of Greece. wrong. Santorini was cool and all, but there was just way too many people there. And the tour is pretty rushed. Although, Santorini does have a volcano. And yes, I know that sounds old, but for a volcano, not really. Anyways, we went to this restaurant thing. We didn't really eat or drink anything, but I guess it was pretty cool. Okay, so right now we're at a restaurant and winery just for a short stop, and then we'll be back to our next part of the tour. And here you actually get to view some of the indoor seating. And now we're in the town part, and see what I mean by crowded? It's crazy. And in case you're curious, yes, in certain parts of Greece, there is a law where your house does have to be a certain way, and obviously you can tell here, because look at all the buildings. You got these churches, and there's a pretty common theme, which is they are all white. And then, just like that, that part of Santorini was over, and then we had to go to a completely different town of Santorini. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, this view was kind of cool, but still nothing compared to Mykonos. I mean, all the buildings had their own interesting thing, even though they all had to be relatively similar. And down there is actually a donkey trail, which used to be a common thing to use. But as you can see, they're still using it to this very day. And this is the volcano I was talking about earlier, which was cool to see. And down there, you can see our cruise ship. And there was even this little castle thingy built into the wall, which was really cool to see. And then we walked back down this path, and we were basically the last ones to do so. And there was also this castle up on the hill, this really pretty view all around this part of the town, and one last pretty view before we left this town. And my mom had been to this exact town before, and it was nowhere near as crowded. I mean, we were basically bumping into other groups. It was crazy. But there were some pretty cool volcanic hillsides on the way, which I thought was really interesting to see because they were all really cool and volcanic looking. And of course, there's a nice hillside view of the town before we were on the water getting out of this town. And right there is that yellow castle again. And then our tender got to the boat really fast. There you can see the Norwegian Pearl and a view of the town during nighttime. And then just like that, it was time for our final day. And honestly, probably one of the most enjoyable days on the whole cruise ship. We got to see our final town. And we kind of thought it was going to be like Santorini all over again. And we didn't have our hopes up super high. But when we got there, we realized that it is very, very pretty and scenic here. And there are so many buildings. I mean, does this not feel bigger than Santorini to you? And there was even multiple movies filmed here. And somehow Santorini is still way more popular to go to than Mykonos. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you'll know I love succulents. So I was really excited to see this ice plant growing everywhere. And if you've watched any of the other videos of us in Europe, yeah, you're gonna know that there are somehow cats everywhere. I mean, like, when we were in Montenegro, I felt like there were more cats than there were people. Anyways, we got to this nice little quiet beach, although we didn't have time to get in it, and we couldn't because then we'd get our tour bus dirty, but it was still cool to look at. Then we got to this town to stop to get some food real quick, and we found this really cool church. So we went around to explore it. It had this really nice bell tower, and I heard that inside there was a museum. But before we went to that, we went to the main part of it. So this is a Greek Orthodox church. And as the name implies, it's one of the religions of Greece. Now, I'm pretty sure this church held up pretty well because a lot of this stuff looks original. Like these pillars and the paint on them looks very original. And yeah, it does have some stuff chipping off, but it still looks like some of the original stuff. And then later on, we found out that there was a museum inside it. So I went up these stairs, went in. Of course, it had many different types of artifacts from the past, like clothing and also written things, which I think it's always really cool when they can preserve written things. Of course, there was a lot of clothing and even more artifacts. I thought it was also pretty interesting that they had like some shelves and stuff, like old artifacts like that. Because most of the times in churches like these, when they have a museum, most of the artifacts they have is just like paintings and books. They don't usually get to preserve like any chairs or anything like that. But in this church, there was a lot of that. And outside of it, there was this little garden thing with a nice statue, which I thought was really pretty. And just like that, we're off, leaving our final destination in Greece and on this entire cruise ship. I mean, at the end, we did get to go to Athens, but it wasn't to stay at. It was just a stop to get to the airport. Because we went from Athens to Philadelphia and then finally to Jacksonville. And we got to see one more thing at the end, which was the sun going down, which was really pretty. And of course, an overview of our port right outside of Athens. Alright, so right now we're on the cruise ship, early morning, in a town right outside of Athens. And there's 3 things we really need to do. Get on a plane, get off this cruise ship, and then get home. Because today is our final day. We don't have an excursion in Athens because our plane leaves in a couple hours. Not really that soon for now, but it leaves in a couple hours. So in a few minutes, we're going to leave this cruise ship. Then we're going to have to get to our airport. And then hopefully, on the airplane ride back home, I can see out the window and see some of the cool architecture in Athens since it's super old. But yeah, let's just hope that everything goes right on our trip back home. And on our bus ride to the airport, we actually saw the Parthenon. And then we got on our airplane, and our airplane took off, giving us some okay views. We didn't really see the Parthenon again, and we didn't really see anything else interesting until we flew right over the Alps, right above Italy. And after that, not much happened. All we really did is got home. So now we're back home, just a few days later after we got here. I think this trip was pretty fun, and this was the last episode. There's a total of 5 videos I recorded, so if you want to go check out the other 4. But with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please like, subscribe, but anyways, thanks for watching. Bye!